Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good Tavach.
Good Tavach, everybody. Shavua Tov. Start off a new week. Coming to the closure of the week of the month of Adar this week. This coming Shabbos HaChodesh, the new month. It's the beginning Sunday, next Sunday is a new month. It's Chodesh Nisan, the month of Pesach, the holiday of Pesach, etc. My friends, last week was a special week. We ended off the first part of the book of Tanya, the 53 chapters of the Alter Rebbe of the book of Tanya. And this week we start the second part of the Tanya. It's the Alter Rebbe called the second part in his writings. The Alter Rebbe wrote to Tanya in 1796. And he actually is according to many. He wrote the second part before the first part, but later changed his mind to put to flip it around and put the first part, the 53 chapters first, and then to put this part, the second part of the Tanya, which he called, as you'll see in a moment, he called it the book of education. But later it received its name, Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah, the portal of unity and faith. The difference between the truth is both of these parts of Tanya overlap each other. Many different aspects that you're going to hear mentioned in these 12 chapters. Actually, the Alter Rebbe didn't have a chance to finish this part. There's only 12 chapters in this part, and these 12 chapters, if you remember the previous 53 chapters that we went through, these 12 chapters have many things that I already mentioned in the first part of the Tanya. The basic difference between the first 53 chapters of Tanya and the 12 chapters that we are going to go and learn together, Mitzvah Shem, is that the first 53 chapters of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe wanted to impress the most important concept of mind over matter. That that the Eibishter, God, created a human being in many facets and many concepts, but the basic two was mind, intellect, and emotions. And he explained this in the aspect of the three intellectual concepts of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and the seven emotional aspects, which is Chesed, which is basically starts off with the two attributes of kindness and severity, love and fear, etc. And how God wanted that through the service of man, the man would have mind over matter, and he would be able to control his emotions, and not only control his emotions, but elevate his emotions, and bring them to a greater level, which will not only elevate his emotions, but ultimately elevate his intellect too, and will elevate his soul, and bring about the perfection of the world. And the Alter Rebbe went through that even though there are many challenges that a man have, that humans go through, this is all part of the divine process and divine purpose of the creation of the world to bring about this unity and this perfection, really, between his soul, between God and his emotions and the world itself. This 12 chapters that we're going to study is more the concept of intellect, is more the aspect of the way a Jew needs to learn Torah and understand the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the oneness of God in the world, and his faith, as it's called, the portal of unity and faith. And really, it's an intellectual more than a concept of a practical. I'm going to try to bring it into practicality, but it's more of an intellectual concept, very intellectual, very spiritual. And what the Alter Rebbe wants to impress upon us is how we need to think and how we need to learn and how we need to understand godliness to be able to have a true love of God and fear of God. It all depends on our understanding and the way we learn something, the way we comprehend something, and the way we ultimately translate it in our mind. To have this aspect of true unity between God and our mind. But Alter Rebbe explained in the beginning of Tanya, in the first book of Tanya, that the true unity, the greatest unity that God can have with a human being is in his mind, in his wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That's where there can be true unity between God and a human being. Because that concept, the Eibishter gave us the Torah, which is the wisdom of God. And as the Alter Rebbe expresses it, that the wisdom of God is one, and it's brought down from even Maimonides, that God and his wisdom is one. So if we can connect to God's wisdom, we become one with God's wisdom. The more we can become united with God, the more we will have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, that's why this is called the portal, Shar HaYichud, the portal of unity, Ve'emuna, and the portal of faith. Now, faith and unity are really two different opposite things, because faith is an emotion again. But going back to a human being's faith and the way he has faith and the way his faith permeates him and unites with him and the way he acts on the basis of faith. So, so ultimately, we're going to come back to the emotions, faith, and our love of God and fear of God. But this whole work that we're going to do in the next, I don't know how long, hopefully we hang in there together. And it's very important, this lessons that we give, that if you have a question, I don't see your faces. If you have a question, you'd ask the question, because I don't want to just fly over your heads and just have a this intellectual journey that really we don't know. I don't know if somebody is understanding it or not. So it's important that when we learn together, that you ask the question, especially in these things, that we try to be on the same page as much as possible intellectually, that we understand each other, so especially those that are on Zoom in learning with us, so that you have the capability to unmute yourself and to ask the question and to learn together, because this is a learning experience. And the more we can learn together, the more we will have a greater experience together. I know that it's on Zoom and it's very difficult, and much easier to learn this part of Tanya sitting together around the table. There we'll see how it goes, because just for me to pontificate and talk for an hour, that's not a big accomplishment. So it's supposed to be a learning experience, and if there's no communication, it'll be very hard to know if I'm just talking and nobody's understanding one word I'm saying. So I ask everybody to please ask a question. If you don't understand something, don't do it in the chat, because it's hard for me to talk and read the chat. Ask the question. Unmute yourself. Ask the question. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. No question is stupid. Every question is valuable, and every question helps us all learn. So we're going to start with the introduction of the Alter Rebbe on this chapter, on these 12 chapters. The Alter Rebbe gives an introduction to the Tanya. And this is the introduction to this book of Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah, the portal the teachings of unity and faith. Likutei Amorim, a compilation of teachings. Actually, the first book is also Likutei Amorim, but the first book was given the name Sefer Shalbenim, the book of the middle man, and this part was given the name, as we said, Shari Yichud V'Emunah, the portal of unity and of faith. Chelik Sheni, this is the second part, Hanikra B'Shem Chinuch Katan, which is entitled Chinuch. Chinuch is education for a cotton, for a child. Chinuch Katan, education for a child, whether it's a child, real child, or a child that we are all children when it comes to education. But this is the concept of education, how we need to educate ourselves, how we need to educate a child, how we need to learn. Melukate, which the Alter Rebbe says is a gathering from Sfarim, Seifrim, from teachers, from books, from teachers of heavenly saintly whose soul are in Gan Eden. So this, the Alter Rebbe says, his source, and as we know, the Alter Rebbe, as we say, it was written in 1796. His main educator was the Mezritcher Maggid, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. So, as it says over here, this mention of his source echoes the words of the Alter Rebbe in the title page of the first part of Tanya. Rabbi Yossi Yitzchak Shneis in the sixth of Alter Rebbe notes in one of his talks that the books here traditionally refer to the works of the Maharal Miplag, the Shalah. His teachers are the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mezritch. So the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of founder of Chassidim, and he had the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. His student was the Maggid of Mezritch, who the Alter Rebbe based his teachings a lot on the Maggid of Mezritch, his teacher, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. Alter Rebbe didn't actually have a relationship with as an adult, a relationship. They said he met him as a 3-year-old child, but he didn't have a relationship as a teacher with the Baal Shem Tov. But he got all his teachings from the Mezritcher Maggid, who got his teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, based a lot on the Arizal, the teachings of the Arizal. Miyusad al Parsha Shoina. This 12 chapters, the Alter Rebbe says, is based on the first paragraph, Shal Krishma, on the first paragraph of the Krishma, of the recital of the Shema. So you have the first paragraph of the Shema is Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, the Lord is our God, Hashem Echad, the Lord is one. We say this every day. We're supposed to say the first chapter of Shema every single day, not once a day, but actually twice a day. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So there you have already the unity of God. And then we say, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto La'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem, blessed is his name. Kavod, the glory, Malchusai of his kingship, La'olam Va'ed, forever and ever. And then we go to the first main chapter, Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta Hashem Elokecha, and I will love the Lord my God, B'chol levavcha, with all my heart, B'chol nafshecha, with all my soul, B'chol meidecha, and with all my might. whatever I have. And there's many interpretations to these verses. This says, Kabbala says, that the first verse, Shema Yisrael, which if you look in your siddur, will say that you have to have kavanah when you say this verse. You have to have intent. You need to know the meaning of that line. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Every one of us, when we say that verse, we need to know what it means. We have to have an understanding in that verse, whether it's in the simple meaning. As we all know that the Torah is divided. The Torah has 4 layers, Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod. So in that verse alone, you have the simple meaning. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. What is the meaning to the word one? The Lord is one. What is the meaning to the word one? He's not two. What does it mean to the word one? Echad, some explain in a simple meaning. Echad, if you want to go to a little bit more deeper, Echad has 3 letters. Al, Ches, Dalid. Aleph is God. Ches is the 8 heavens, 7 heavens and 7 worlds, and the 8th heaven, the 8th world. And then you have Dalet as 4 sides of the world. If you look in the Shema, if you look in the Torah, you'll see that the word Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, the Ayin of that letter, the Ayin is big, and the Dalet of the word Echad is also big. In the actual writings of the Torah, in the Torah scroll. The Ayin is big of the letter Shema, the Dalet is big of the letter Echad, and you put the Ayin Dalet together, it's Aid, is a witness. So you and I are a witness to that statement. We have to be a witness to the statement of Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. We have to say testimony. How do we say testimony? A witness is somebody that shows, that emphasizes that something is true, whether he saw it or whether he testifies to it. You're a witness, whether you testify or not. You saw something, you automatically become a witness. And that's what the Torah tells you, that if you see something, you have to be testified to it. So a Jew needs to testify, a human being needs to testify to that aspect. And to testify, that alone, that word, or I say testify, also has many meanings. To testify means to live it. You're a testimony. You're a witness. Is the way you live. The way you live this unity. How do I live in this unity? How do I express this unity? How do I talk this unity? How do I walk this unity? This oneness, echad, this oneness of God. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va, blessed is the glory of God, is also a unity, is the concept in which we're going to learn, Yechudi La and Yechudi Tata. It's a Kabbalistic statement, the higher unity and the lower unity. There's a unity the way God sees it, and there's a unity the way humans see it. There's 2 different unities in the world. To the Eibishter, to God, everything is one. In the way God looks at everything in the world, it's true unity. And if you look in the Rambam, Maimonides says that it's very hard for us to understand this concept in a human mind, God's unity. Because God is the world and the world is God. There's no separation between God and the world and God. It's very hard for a human being who by him everything is separate, him and his knowledge and a concept is always separation, there's always differences between a person and the thing he knows and the thing he does and the thing he creates. So to the highest level of a person, let's say, that it creates a child, that's the greatest level of his creation. That it comes together, him, a man, a male and female come together, they create a child. Kidmusam, in many ways, in their image, and sometimes in their character. But still that child has its own entity. And becomes separate from them. By the Eibishter, you can't even say that. Nothing can be separate from him. Unity means that it's totally one with him. And that's why the Rambam Maimonides says that a true unity in the world, true oneness in the world is only God. Nothing else in the world, every creation automatically has its own identity. So even souls have their separate identity, even angels have their separate identity. So even as in the celestial worlds of angels, where there it's more spiritual, still each angel has their own identity. Still in the levels of souls, within Kabbala, the souls are even higher than angels. Come from even a higher world in a spiritual sense than angels, still have their own identity. And the second you have an own identity, it's a creation, you're not the creator. And that's really the difference between creation and creator. The creator is one with his creation, and his creation is one with him. There's no separation by God. Separation is by creation. The second you are created, it doesn't make a difference whether you're created in a physical sense or you're created in a spiritual sense. You're a creation. Therefore, this is a very, as we're going to journey through this subject, this is extremely a very intellectual concept, Kabbalistic intellectual concept, which the philosophers in Kabbalah and in spirituality have spoken about through the history, and they argued a lot in this. This is not something that is that everybody agrees with in the philosophical terms. We know, for example, the Maimonides and the Arizal had a whole different philosophy in the concept of the Sfirot, of the manifestations of godliness. And they had a very different view. And it was all based on their argument in the aspect of this unity of godliness, the unity of God. And the Rambam view was in the unity of God there's nothing, and you can't even express an attribute of God in God's unity. And the Arizal argued with the Rambam and said there are 10 manifestations in the unity of God. And the Alter Rebbe tries to make a middle ground between the Rambam Maimonides and the Arizal, and he says that it all depends on the view of God or the view of man. And the view of God, there's one aspect, there's one light, there's one energy that comes to the world, and everything is separated in the view of a human being, of creation, that they are different manifestations. So this is going to be a very interesting journey to try to explain, as Alter Rebbe is going to try to explain to us this concept, the unity of God, and most important thing, how's faith? What is this? We're not here into just talk philosophy. It's not a class of philosophy. It's a class of faith. How does it translate to us in the faith of God? Now, in our emunas Hashem and our faith of God, to what it means to the way we have faith in the unity and the oneness of God, and the way it means to us as humans in the world. And that's why the Alter Rebbe right away starts that it is based on the first verse of the Shema, which each and every one of us is supposed to say every single day. And as I said, each and every one of us needs to have an understanding in the first verse of Shema, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, The Lord is a God, the Lord is one. So the Alter Rebbe goes again, and he says, I call this chinuch katan, education. It's all based on education. The verse says, "Chanech lanar al pi darkei." Educate the child according to his ways. Gam ki yaskin leyaser mimenu. For even when he grows old, he will not depart from it. It's important to educate a child. A child in this Chanech lanar al pi darkei is a statement of in ethics of our fathers, I believe. And they teach a child. Number 7. Let me just look up this number 7. 1 second. I'll tell you exactly where it comes from. Proverbs. I'm sorry. So Chanech lanar Pidaike is a statement in Proverbs. So it's in the Torah Shebeksav. It's in the written law. Chanech lanar Pidaike kan kiyaskin leyaser mimena. So question. So here, when you have to teach a child, it's an obligation not to wait for the child to grow up, but actually to teach a child. We know I did mention ethics of our fathers. In ethics of our fathers, there's what's the difference between teaching a child and teaching an adult. So in Pirkei Avos, it says the difference is writing on an empty piece of paper or writing on a full piece of paper. So teaching an adult he has a full page already. He has many things written on his brain already. And now you're trying to push in there something new. You take a child and you teach a child, he's an empty paper. So here he's capable of taking anything you teach him because it's an empty piece of paper. And that's the beauty. And that's why Jews have always been into education of children, to make sure not only to educate them about the world, but for surely to educate a child on Judaism, and let him seep in as much as possible of Torah and of mitzvahs, even though he's not obligated in mitzvahs, he's not obligated in learning Torah. But the more the child will acquire that knowledge, the more he will not depart from him. That later on, when everything else comes into his life and every other craziness comes into his agenda, he will not give up on the teachings because it will be already part of him, the teachings of Torah. The Alter Rebbe says, since the verse writes according to his way, that means you teach a 5-year-old according to his way. You teach a 6-year-old according to his way. You teach a 7-year-old according to his way. You teach a child according to the maturity of the child, according to the form of his brain, and what he can acquire. So when you say you teach a child, when it says in Proverbs, you teach a child according to his way, then this implies that it's not the perfect truth. You're teaching a child according to the capability of the child. So what do you mean you teach a child that he won't forget it? If you're teaching a child, you're not teaching him the total truth. He can't handle the total truth the way it's really meant in the Torah. So in Cain, if so, the Alter Rebbe asks, Ma mal yusa, what is the merit? Gam ki yaskel liyasem mimenu, even if he grows old, he will not depart from it. Indeed, it would seem that the very opposite should be the case. When the child matures, he should forsake his childish path in favor of the path of truth. Why would you teach a child according to his way when his way is immature right now? He's a 5-year-old, he's a 6-year-old, he's a 10-year-old, he's an 11-year-old. What does he know the truth? What is an 11-year-old? What a 10-year-old apprehend the truth. When he's become an adult, then he'll know the truth. What possible merit could there be from not departing from his immature, childish understandings? But that doesn't take away from the verse. The verse says, teach the child according to his ways. Now, I want everybody over here, I don't see your faces, no merit, seems like. I want all my people on Zoom, at least, to think about this a second, because I truly believe, first of all, the Tanya was not written for a 5-year-old child. The Tanya was written for people like us, for everybody, adults. Alter Rebbe didn't write the Tanya for a 5-year-old child. Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya for adults. So the Alter Rebbe was talking to the child within us. We're all immature, and we all are far from maturity that comes with the learning of Torah. At least I can talk for myself. So I'm far from mature in the learning of Torah. I'm far from the sage of what means to learn the Torah with true maturity and the way you should really learn the Torah. So we're all, I believe, in youth. You know, this very statement of the, again, in Pirkei Avos, Al tiskakel b'kankan asher el ma sheyesh bo. Don't look at the vessel, but look what's in the vessel. But the Mishnah went to men, don't look at the age of the person. The person can be an old person, but he's still immature. And his understanding and what's in him is far from maturity. Yes, you can. The Mishnah continues. You can have old wine in a new vessel, and you can have an old vessel that doesn't even have new wine in it. So don't look at the vessel. Let's not look at the age. This famous expression of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that by Jews we don't go to the age that it says in the passport. It doesn't important your age, how old you are, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. To many of us, and I talk to myself, I'm still in the young age of education. My knowledge still is in the young age of education. I still there's a lot to learn. And there's a lot of maturity that I need yet to acquire in the maturity of knowledge. So think about it right now. I'm an immature person. I'm learning very highly matters in this Tanya, what we are teaching. But al pi darkai, we need to learn the spiritual matters according to our ways, the way we're right now. We cannot say that I'm going to come mature, I'll learn. No, that's really the lesson of the class. You know, truthfully, even as children, some people say, "Oh, we'll wait to teach him when he's bar mitzvahs, when he's a mature person. We'll teach him Torah. We'll wait to teach him Torah after his bar mitzvah, or wait for his bar mitzvah to teach him Torah. Or when he becomes older, he'll learn Torah. Meanwhile, we'll stuff him with everything else, but not teach him the Torah." Comes this plastic and says, no. Don't wait to learn lofty matters, spiritual matters, when you're going to become mature. Educate a child according to his ways, the way he is now. So, my friends, we need to learn lofty matters the way we are right now. We cannot wait to learn lofty matters, spiritual matters, godly concepts. We're going to wait until we're going to become mature. We might never become mature. And the truth is, if you teach him the way he is now, then he will not forget it, because it's going to affect him the way he is now. And that's going to be the teachings. That's going to be the I believe, the Alter Rebbe is giving you introduction to the oneness of God and to the faith of man. Because in many ways, they're two opposites. The oneness of God is very lofty. The faith of man might be very extremely immature in his faith. But this is going to bring, hopefully, through educating the brain, the way you are now in faith is going to be changed, and is maybe going to become more mature through learning lofty oneness concepts of God. So let's go back to the Tanya. In the Muda Zois, now it's a well-known. It's very well known that the love of God and the root and the foundation of divine service. What does that mean? Look in the colored box. The performance of Torah study and mitzvahs in thought and speech and in deed is rooted in the founded upon one's love and fear of God. The awe of God enables the Jew to properly observe the prohibitive commandments, while the love of Him makes it possible for the Jew to perform the positive commandments with inner feeling. But the Alter Rebbe is saying, it's very basic, very simple. The more we comprehend God, the more we will love Him. The more we understand God, the more we will be in awe of Him. So that is the root. Oneness of God, understanding the oneness of God, the more will be ahavta Hashem Elokecha. The more we will love Him. They cannot go. There's no separation. The more we bring unity between these things, the more we will have a greater relationship of love and fear of God. Via Ava, and the Alter Rebbe says, love of God is the root and the fundament of what motivates one to do good. The more I love somebody, the more I want to connect with him. The more I want to do for him. That's why it's so important, Avas Yisrael. Love of humanity. The more I love humans, the more I want to do for them. The more I love God, the more I want to do for him. Whether it's Torah obligations or it's rabbinical obligations. The very famous story in the Talmud of a princess who met Rabbi Akiva, one of the Roman princesses who met Rabbi Akiva. And he said to her, she said to him, he knew he was a rabbi, a great sage. He said to him, I don't understand the Jews. They're very smart people. The Jews are extremely smart people, I've been told. But it's seemingly that they were not that smart. And Rabbi Akiva said, what do you mean by that? And he said that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves 613 commandments. They said, Na'aseh v'nishma. The Jewish people at Mount Sinai, they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. He said to him, I don't understand how the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, before even they were given the commandments. Before God even said to them one commandment, they said, we will do and we will listen. I mean, what is that smart? What happened if God would give them 1,000,000 commandments? How would a Jew say we will do and listen if before even they were given any of the commandments? So he said, that's a very good question, but it's not a question to a Jew. And she said, why? And she said, because a Jew loves God. A Jew loves God. And if a Jew loves God, it doesn't make a difference how many commandments God commands them. It doesn't make a difference if it would be one or it would be 1,000,000. If you truly love somebody else, it doesn't make a difference how much you do for them. It's not in the number anymore. When I love somebody, I will do everything for them. If I love the Eibishter, there's not in the number anymore. It's not important, the number. We love the Eibishter, we love God, and therefore we want to do everything what we want. What we want for God. We are in awe of God, and therefore we would never want to hurt God. It doesn't make a difference what it is. So too in our relationship with another person. We love them, we do everything for them. We are in awe of them, therefore we would never want to hurt them. Never in a million years we would want to hurt a person that we love and that we are in awe of. We are in love with God. We are in awe of God. And therefore we would never want to hurt God, and we would only want to have a relationship with God. The Eibishter has that same love and awe of the Jewish nation, of humanity in general. And therefore God loves to do good for humans, and he's in awe and never wants to hurt anybody. Would never want to hurt any human or the world at large. And that's the root, the Alter Rebbe says. This is the root. I'm giving you the, as he called it, the portal of unity between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God, the Alter Rebbe in these chapters is going to want to impress upon each and every one of us that God is very close. We shouldn't create this picture of a God who is distant. We need to create a picture of God who is one with us, who is extremely, extremely close to us, who is not only close to us, but is united with us, is one with us. And if we can imagine this relationship of oneness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we would do anything for God. And the opposite, we would not hurt. We would not try to break this oneness with God. We would not try to break this relationship with God. Our feeling of distance creates this struggle with godliness because we feel distant from God. Sometimes we feel alone. Sometimes we feel God is not listening. Sometimes we feel God is not interested, God forbid. This is the education of learning to be able to teach ourselves in whatever level we're in. Teach the child according to where he is. Don't try to, you can't force upon a person love of God, as his Alter Rebbe is going to continue. You can't force upon a person awness of God. You can't do that. Every person needs to learn according to the way he is, to what his love of God is, to what his oneness with God is. And then he can have this relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's not a one fits all. This is not something that one fits all. This is something that every person whose brain is separate from one another needs to learn, comprehend, and what fits him or her. This is your private journey. And therefore, I said in the beginning, that if you don't comprehend it, please say, because you can't have a private journey if you don't understand it. So every person needs to try to understand what I'm saying, or what the Alter Rebbe is saying. I'm not saying anything. Try to understand what the Alter Rebbe is saying, and try to understand it in my mind, in your minds. And because the more you'll understand this, the more you're going to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God. So let's go back to the Tanya. Which is Barbim Koimon, as will be explained in its place. So as I said before, a lot of this that we're going to learn is already mentioned in the Tanya. Look in the color blocks, as we'll explain in their proper place, refers to chapter 4 and in chapters 4 and 41 of the first part of Tanya. So a lot of this of the Alter Rebbe is explained in its place. As I said, truth is the Alter Rebbe, it's brought down, the Alter Rebbe wrote this first and wanted this to be first before the later changed it. So a lot of times you'll see the Alter Rebbe says in the future means actually in the Tanya would mean in the past. This reference, as the Rebbe points out, corroborates with the tradition handed down by Chassidim. I just said that the Alter Rebbe originally intended to reverse the current order, with the second part of the Tanya appearing first as chapter 1, and the 53 chapters of the first part of becoming part 2. But the Alter Rebbe changes for his reasons, and he put the 53 chapters first, and he put this second. So many times they're going to hear in Tanya, as we'll explain it later, the Alter Rebbe really meant the 53 chapters of Tanya, but explained it later. The commandment of education of a child, say, is also included in the 613 positive commandments in the Torah, as is brought down in Eirach Chaim in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, section 343, that it's an obligation on parents to teach their children Torah. So, Hine concerning Ba'ava Ksiv, in love of God. In love of God. If you want to go, let's go to this interpretation a second. It'll give us a little bit more of understanding. Since a child is to be educated to observe both prohibitive and positive commandments, again, a child is not obligated to do any mitzvahs or not to do any sins. And a child is not responsible if he did any sins. It's still a mitzvah to educate a child. It follows that his love of God as the root of the fundament of all positive commandments must be such that it serves as a springboard for all the positive commandments that are performed as a result of the education. So until a boy is 13 and a girl is 12 years old, it's all it is education, because it's not real stuff until it becomes about mitzvah, bas mitzvah. We must therefore say that there exists an inferior and transcendent degree of love that serves as the root and the foundation of those mitzvahs that are performed as a result of the education. A degree of love distinct from the superior level that motivates an adult. Nevertheless, as should be explained, this lower level of love too, a love which is accordance to the child's way, possesses a certain permanent quality that makes it desirable that even as he grows old, he will not and indeed should not depart from it. And this, again, to a child, the lower level of love that he has, because it's not a true love, because it's an immature love. Even though he doesn't comprehend what real love is, because he'll learn later as he matures what real love is. So you might say this immature love is not worth it, has no love, it's not real. So again, the Alter Rebbe says no. As we'll learn, this is this lower level of love, immature love, is a basis to his mature love. And again, I believe that this is translated to us. We have to bar mitzvah. We're all past that stage. We're all really bar mitzvah already. We're adults, but we still have an immature love, maybe. And we are starting our education, maybe. I can talk for myself. I am starting my education. Every day I start my education. And every time I learn Tanya, this is like the beginning of learning to me. And this immature learning is going to be, as I mature, is going to still be there. This immature love, this beginning love, this is what's called in Kabbala and Chassidus, avatata, lower level of love, immature love, well, is all part of the mature love that will happen later. In a relationship, even in a relationship, adult relationship, as we say, as we love each other, as we start a relationship between a man and a woman, and they're 20 years old, and it's immature love. It's not real, because the real world has not become part of their existence, and they have this immature, childish love. But it's so beautiful, this love, because it's something going to be for them even as they mature, and their love is matured. There's always some of this youth love. It's interesting that even God says, "Zachaytila chesed nu'urayach." I remember the kindness of your youth. Young love is a beautiful thing. That's why it's important, to have this process of this young love, this youth love. And then as we grow together in this relationship, we realize it's a deeper love. There's a greater love than this youth, the youth of love that we had when we were young and naive and maybe stupid. But wow, this was a foundation for the future relationship that we have. The Abishta says it to the Jewish nation. I just said, God says, I still remember that young, immature relationship that we had when we went out of Egypt, and you just ran out into the desert. It didn't last that long, as we know in history. They started to kvetch, the Jews started, but it was in the beginning, there was this fatal attraction that the Jewish people, that's like, again, like a fatal attraction in the youth of love, when we fall in love when we're young, and we just run after each other like crazy, very immaturely, and not realizing what it means, even what this whole brings about, what happens with this love, that what's gonna happen, and then it happens, whatever, life happens, and children and bills and headaches. But that love, but our deep connection with each other continues this relationship, and we not only survive, we blossom as a beautiful family, and we deal with all the ups and downs of life. So too, in the relationship with God and the Jewish people, also was a beginning that started off with a beautiful relationship. Then we made the golden calf. Boom. The chasana was over, the wedding bells were over, the honeymoon was over, and real life came into happen, and we sinned right away. We didn't give up, and God didn't give up, and the Jews didn't give up, and the relationship continued. We remember that. We always remember that. We coming to Pesach. We remember that love. We remembered Zechli Tzias Mitzrayim. We remembered that crazy time, that crazy joy. God remembers, and the Jewish people remember it too. We remember that beginning of that relationship, when we did crazy things with each other. We remember, that's what the pasuk says. Chanech lanar. We have, this expression, the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rava said, I wish I can pray like a child. I wish I can pray like the prayer of a child. Right? A child, you tell him to pray to God, he prays to God. He doesn't ask all these questions. He has this naive, pure relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a real relationship. It's not based on any give and take. A child has a pure relationship with God. It might be immature. It might be simple. It might be, but sometimes though that simplicity is sometimes pure. Sometimes that love that we had when we were young in the beginning of the relationship was pure. It might have been naive. It might have been simple. It might have been immature, but it was pure. It was there was something real in that relationship. There was something real in that naivety. There was something real in that purity, that immaturity. The Alter Rebbe says also that we should realize, and he's going to explain that there's something real in that immature love. There's something real in that mature relationship that we always need to hang on to, and we always need to come back to. Maybe I always tell a chas and kala when I meet them, before they get married, that they should write down why they want to marry each other. They should write down what you fall in love with this guy. Why do you love this guy so much? Or why do you love her so much? Like, what are you so crazy about one another? Write it down. Put it away. Put it away. Each one of you should write it down and put it away for a rainy day. When you're not going to like each other for whatever reason, you're going to be angry with one another. You'll open it up. You'll read it. What are you so crazy about him? What are you heads over heel over you, one another? Right? That nobody can tell you anything. That's that pure ava, the pure love of one another, based sometimes on maybe rationalizations that maybe won't make sense in the future, but it makes sense right now for some reason. It makes sense to this child that when you tell him love the Abe, he says, I love God. It makes sense to him. It makes sense to her. Those are the beauty. Those are the beautiful things that we teach each other in an immature state. Whether, as I said before, it means a child, a real child, or whether we're in a relationship with God right now. That we started this relationship with God. We want to have this relationship with God. Not based per se on intellect, but based on our will, on our immature, naive expressions. Teach yourself in the way you are. Write it down. What is the beginning of this relationship? Because it's going to come to good for you in the future as you grow and as you learn. Because learning sometimes brings you to questions and to doubts, and that's adulthood. As a child grows and suddenly becomes smarter, he also becomes smarter in a positive way, and he also becomes smarter in a negative way, that he starts to doubt and question and challenge the relationship. But if he remembers what he's learned in the beginning, he remembers that beginning journey, will come to good use in his journey in his future. Well, we did over an hour of learning. I don't even realize. Anybody has any questions? No? Wow. Well, we haven't yet finished even the, yes.
No questions. It was just, your analogies, everything was so good. I really appreciate it. Very good today.
I second that. It was a fantastic, inspirational share. Thank you, Rabbi Bucket.
Yes.
Okay.
I heard that.
So, okay.
Yay!
Okay. I am happy. We will continue Rich next week. It will continue this beginning of the introduction to the Shari Yichud Ve'emunah, to the portal of oneness and love and faith of God. And if you have any questions, you may ask me in the week. And you all know my number and my email. And God bless you all. We'll see you in Michem again tomorrow. Also, Tanya, tomorrow, the Chitas of the day. We'll see you at 8 a.m. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful Sunday. Have a beautiful week. God bless you all, my friends. I give you all this week, actually, on Tuesday is my birthday. My 58th birthday. So I give you already a blessing. God bless you all. God should give you all your desires, all your needs.
Amen.
And God give us the ultimate blessing, the coming of Mashiach. Have a great week, everybody. Shavua Tov. God bless you all. See you soon.